welcome to this episode of Authentic Achievements, where it's my absolute privilege and pleasure to be joined by my good friend, Erin, who I'll introduce to you properly in a moment. But Erin, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
I'm so excited to chat with you again.
Oh, me too. We have such fascinating conversations, don't we?
And other people will think they're fascinating. I know you and I think it's fascinating.
We think they're fascinating and kind of sharing some of those stories. But before we get into that, let me share with our audience a little bit more about you. So Erin Marcus is the founder and CEO of Conquer Your Business, an international company helping driven entrepreneurs and small business owners get the financial and emotional freedom they need to build a business and a life that they're proud of. Having made the successful leap from corporate executive to entrepreneur, Erin uses that experience along with her MBA education and street smart upbringing to help her clients reach heights they never dreamed possible. And more importantly, have fun doing it. And Erin is also an international speaker and host of the fabulous Ready Yet podcast. And you do such an amazing job of bringing to life some of the complex challenges that entrepreneurs face in conquering their business, but in a way that actually makes it fun. Because once things are fun, they become less challenging, don't they? Automatically, they become less challenging.
Right. I mean, the way that I describe it is I didn't quit my fancy job to be miserable.
Yeah.
Right? If I wanted to be miserable, I could go get a job.
I love that. I say that all the time. If I want to be miserable or unhappy, I can go and do it somewhere else.
I can go do that anywhere. Or one of my friends once said to me, you know, the phrase, life is too long to whatever. Yeah. Life is too short, right? Yeah. Life is too short to be miserable, right? We don't have time for this.
It is. And the one thing that none of us get any more of is time.
No.
And yeah, I read Stephen Bartlett's book before Christmas, The Happy Sexy Millionaire, and in it he talks about having an hourglass, an hour-long hourglass, and he's got them dotted around his house. He said, and every now and again he'll tip them over just to remind him that he never gets this hour back. So to be really conscious and present in the moment. And I must admit, I've done the same, which is just reminding yourself, if this were the last hour on earth, is this what I do? And if it's not even something you'd like to do in the last week of your life, then you probably shouldn't be doing it.
It's so true. I mean, I think that is one of the interesting things I watch happen with small business owners and entrepreneurs. They go into business to have more control over their life, and then they fall victim to a situation where they have less control over their life. Right. They end up doing all the things they don't like doing because someone told them they're supposed to do them.
Yeah.
Right. And you end up doing less of what you like to do.
Oh, it's so true, isn't it? And I mean, the first day when you become an entrepreneur, you suddenly realize, your payroll, your IT, your HR.
That was my first meltdown. No, IT, realizing that I was my IT department was my first official meltdown as an entrepreneur when the printer didn't print. And I realized I have nobody to call.
Yeah.
Like I don't even know where to begin to solve this problem. And I don't even have somebody to call to help me do this, right?
It's true, isn't it? Because they're the bits that we don't always think through before we get there. We think through some of the biggies, but right. As is often the case with life, it's not the biggies that trip us up. The devil's in the detail, and it's the detail that piles up, and you kind of sweep it under the carpet for a little bit until all of a sudden there's not enough room between the carpet and the ceiling for you to keep walking. So you're kind of like, oh my gosh, you might need to do something about that.
And I said that to a team member this morning. I asked her where something was, and I forgot what her reply to me was but I said, oh, well, as long as it's easy, because we all know I won't take the time to figure it out. I'll just ignore it until it becomes a big catastrophe, right? Because I won't go do that, right? I won't. It's one of those things, whatever it was, I'm sure it had to do with tech that I don't like. And I'm like, well, I'm glad you fixed it, because I would have ignored it until it became a disaster.
Yeah. And I think we do, don't we? We do that. I think that's sometimes the lessons that we learn, having been in corporate life where you do have somebody to call. You suddenly realize that you've got to do those things differently. But before we get into that, tell us a little bit about your journey. So what made you make the leap And what's been your greatest lesson so far?
Oh my gosh. So the journey makes no sense until you look backwards and go, oh, okay, so that's why, right? Because I was, if you want to go way, way back in the origin story, I grew up in Chicago in the 70s and 80s, public schools, no brilliant education. I not because it wasn't necessarily available. I felt I had other things I could be doing at the time, right?
Yeah.
Right. But somewhere along the way, I became very driven. And I think it was because there's this weird mixture of thoughts in my head where I've never felt the rules applied to me. I really did. I never have. I've always felt that I can go about doing whatever it is that I wanted to do. However, I always knew I had to do it for myself. There was no entitlement associated with it, right? I never felt the rules applied to me, but I never felt anything was just going to be handed to me either.
Yeah.
Right. So because I felt that way, I just had this career where I did a good job, would open the next door or opportunity. I did a good job, it opened the next door and opportunity. And I worked my way up in a corporate job where they paid for an MBA. I was given ownership shares in the company. I was brought into rooms by great mentors that were way above my pay grade at the time. And someone poured energy and effort into me. But they did it because I, did my part.
Yeah.
Right. So I learned corporate business. And my first leap out of that world was actually with a franchise.
Okay.
But and the franchise had to do with helping families with aging parents. I liked it because I wanted the business aspect of it. It was what I called a baby franchise. So they had a framework, but it wasn't really completely thought out. So I had a lot of freedom to actually help them create the path. And while I got my business to the top 10 out of 200 offices in like 18 months, because I had the business background.
Yeah.
Right. Because I had the business background. But what started to happen is working with families with aging parents, right? Which is everybody's trauma. All my clients were in trauma. It was a horribly difficult situation interpersonally for them. From a business standpoint, it was a logistical nightmare with barriers to entry on any of the things that we did. So my competition is working under the table while I'm above board with insurance and taxes and much higher expenses. And at the same time, when I would have my turn at the networking event to talk about my business, the other people there were like, yeah, we know aging parents, blah, blah, blah. But why are you making money? Like, how come it's working for you?
Yeah.
And it was because of this business background and a MBA that focused on marketing and executive leadership. So I got to this point where I could stay in the trauma of my clients in the very logistical, difficult franchise, not because they made it difficult, but just because of the business that it was. Or I was having these amazing aha moments with friends and networking friends and my vendors and my partners. And even the franchisor hired me to help train new franchises. And that felt way more exciting.
Yeah.
Right? Where instead of just building my business, now I got to build everybody's business.
I love that.
And right. And through that journey, strength finders, diving into personal development, diving into all of the personal journey that comes with a successful entrepreneurial journey, I realized, okay, if I just play to my strengths, that's here.
Yeah.
And to our point, have fun doing it. It's easier for me to work in my genius zone. It's more fun for me to work in my genius zone. It's better for clients. One of the things in my personal life is I say, I don't know how to cook. I don't cook. The world is a better place for me not cooking. No one wants to eat this, right? Like, it's the same thing in my business. If I just stick with the thing that I'm good at, and where is that intersection in service to others, everything just works much better.
I love that. It's one of my favorite books is the Big Leap, and that part that says we very often, don't we stop at our sphere of excellence where we know we can earn something for a skill, but that means we're often doing a lot of things we don't like, as well as the one or two things that we do. But once we have take the faith to step into that sphere of genius, which is we're brilliant at it because we love it so much and we've got such a passion, and we take the leap of faith to strip away the other stuff. And that feels very vulnerable, doesn't it, when you step into that space?
I think it feels risky in a lot of different ways. One is you have to get really confident of owning your space. Like I've spent a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of being able to look someone in the eye and say, listen, this is the thing I'm really good at.
Yeah.
But the thing that makes it easier is I can just as easily give you the much longer list of things that I suck at, right? Things that I am not good at. Yeah. And so there's vulnerability in being massively authentic. But I think what happens is there's fear and scarcity around letting go of everything else.
Yeah.
Combined with being susceptible to believing other people's marketing, especially in the small business world, right? Like if you look at marketing and leadership and the just unbelievable amount of volume of information out there about just do this one thing, if you haven't embraced your genius zone, your authenticity really strong in what you know how to do, you're going to be more susceptible to other people's influence.
Yeah.
It doesn't make them wrong or bad. It just might not be the right thing for you.
That's so true, because it's about finding our path, isn't it? And it's one of the reasons clearly we've called this Authentic Achievements, which is, as part of my journey, it was finding my authentic space and growing enough to fit in that space. And like you say, that is that big personal journey that we go on as entrepreneurs that runs alongside our entrepreneurial journey, which is getting past it. We have a natural talent, but we daren't say that because that feels egotistical. We've all been told ego's bad. But once we own our natural talent, but we also own everything else we're bad at.
Right? I mean, I'm more than happy to tell you what I mean, there is so much that, like, there's a reason I'm not allowed to fill out forms and sign up for things and put things on the calendar, because I won't do it right. I won't pay enough attention to it to do it right.
But it's knowing that space, isn't it? And saying, actually, what we, if we, something that we find hard, boring, difficult, just don't want to do, it doesn't matter what it is, will be somebody else's zone of genius. So while it fills us with absolute dread and horror that we might actually have to do it, it's somebody else's baraka. They're going, can I have it? I'd love that. So it's finding the right people in your team, isn't it, where they spark up at the things that zap your energy, and that you spark up at the things that zap theirs.
And learning how, and this was don't judge them.
Yeah.
Like, I think there is a tendency when you really, really love something, the antithesis to it, you don't like it. So it seems odd that somebody else would like it. And so we judge somebody else for liking something we dislike.
Yeah. Well, because it feels like there's a lack of connection, and I guess, and for me, one of the things that really helped on part of my journey is we do live in a world of polarity. So something doesn't exist without its counterpart. So once I realized that and really embraced it, I now am so thrilled when I meet people that hate the thing I love and love the thing I hate, because my thing couldn't exist without them.
Right.
Because polar opposite has to exist. So I'm like, way to go.
Right. I wouldn't get to do what I do without the people who do what they do.
Yeah. But it's that subtle change, isn't it, on the language that we use and how we position things internally as much as how we position them externally. Because if I use it with my little girl all the time, she'll come at her, I'm not good at this, and I always say to her, I'm not good at this yet. Because if you just leave it as I'm not good at this, you'll never be good at it, because you become a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you say I'm not good at it yet, you start to look for ways to improve.
Or I think the danger point in that, though, is, and it really is not with a child who's trying to learn something, but with an adult who has fears and limiting beliefs to overcome in their entrepreneurial journey, in your career, wherever you are. We can use, I need to practice that to get better at it, as an excuse to hide in these patterns, right, of being busy instead of being effective. Well, I'm not good at that, so I have to get good at it. No, you don't. You need to admit that you don't want to do that and hire someone who does.
Absolutely. So I think, you're right. But I think if it's something that you want to do, that you go, I really want to do this, but I keep telling myself I'm not good at it. And that's, I guess, I meet so many entrepreneurs that are great at this stuff. It is their secret sauce, but they can't see it. So they're in that.
Easy for them. So why would you see it, right? And I think that's also why it does take some external person that you admire or respect to help identify these things.
Because you often can't see them for yourself. And the voice we use inside our head is so plausible. It sounds so reasonable. And we never question its motive, do we?
And yet it's usually a big jerk, right? And yet it's usually a big jerk.
It's like, I don't want to spend time with you, and you're the one person I can't leave behind. Wherever I go, you come with me. So, I have to say, I had to go on this journey myself. It's like, why would you allow the one voice that you cannot switch off to be somebody you didn't want to hang around with?
Right.
Because if that was an actual person in front of you, you'd walk away.
Hopefully.
Somebody's calling my name over there. I've got to go. So I think sometimes it's that whole relearning our internal dialect.
Well, and it goes so fast. I think one of the things that I had to learn how to do, your thoughts can run away with you so fast. And for me, it is, I'm able to catch a physical feeling faster than a thought. That whirlwind can be, way off the train tracks before I catch on that the train's even moving, but I can feel the physical feelings. And so I've learned to identify the physical feelings, the physical manifestation of what's going on in my head, and use that as a barometer.
I love that.
Catch it faster.
Because actually our emotional brain responds 24 times faster than our thinking brain. So we think that we're logical, rational human beings, but the reality is 24 times faster we will have felt an emotion, and that's what we respond to. And so very often when you're having a conversation, you go, let's look at what actually happened and what you've made it mean, because both of you were in the same situation, but you both responded emotionally differently based on whatever's happened in your life, in your past, and in what you've created from that, which is why you can show people the same situation and somebody will be anxious and somebody will be angry, because it depends on their perspective coming into it. But factually what happened, when you kind of pull it back, and I remember doing a big redundancy, and people I think got fed up with me in the end, were like, facts are your friends. So let's come back to the facts, because you've created a story and you're off there with the emotion of the story, where we're going. We need to bring all of that back, because that's not happened yet. So let's look at the facts. But it takes a lot of learning and a lot of mentors to be able to
learning how to self-coach through those types of situations is so challenging. And as weird as it sounds, the longer my journey has been in that world, while I've become monumentally less judgmental, my world and who is in it has gotten much smaller.
Yeah.
Because I have all the empathy in the world for the people who have not done that journey, because it's not easy. It's not something you're taught. It goes basically against neuroscience. Like, you are up against some things.
Yeah.
But the more you learn to neutrally observe, that's my big thing, is become an observer of my behavior. As opposed to a judgmental of it. Oh, isn't that interesting? What the hell was I thinking? Why did I do that? because that's how you get out of those spirals faster. And I always go back to my dog, who has since passed, but I had a dog that was highly reactive. I have a new dog that's highly reactive, so I guess certain patterns don't change. But she was never gonna be the confident dog that could go to the beach and go to the art fair and go to the other places with all the people. All we could really do is hope that when she was going on a walk and something startled her, that her recovery time would be faster and faster and faster. And it's the same thing, right? You can't change the way a brain works. This is the way a brain works.
Yeah.
You can only catch it and recover faster and faster and faster.
That's so true, isn't it? Because I always say to Scarlett, we try and live our life through passionate curiosity with self and others. So instead of having to label it and judge it, be curious about it. I wonder why I think that's so right. I wonder why I think they're so wrong. I wonder why they got there. I wonder why I got here. But just that slight change makes such a difference. And I've said for years, if we don't get to choose how people behave towards us, we do get to choose our response, and over time, and that can be how quickly we recover. What we do following that, it can sometimes be in the moment.
The hardest is recovering from your own thoughts, though, right?
Yeah.
Like even now, because this happened recently for me, where I've come so far in this journey, and yet a couple things happened in my business, and I'm like, this went on too long. Like, why didn't I catch it sooner? And you almost get more and more judgmental with yourself. Like, I should know better. I should have seen this. Like, and that's no less damaging than making the bad decision or the decision that didn't work out in the first place.
It's so true. So I'm only smiling because I so do that. It's like, and you're then like, right, you're now wasting even more time,
right?
Wasting yourself. The problem's still not fixed because
because now first you made the mistake. Now we're dwelling on the fact that you made the mistake. Now we're beating ourselves up about the mistake. The mistake still isn't fixed because we're just obsessing over the mistake.
We've only got so much capacity of brain power that we can use, and we're wasting it on the I know that I should know this by now because I've gone through this journey. And like you said, sometimes it only makes sense when you look back. And I've often said, life only makes sense in the rearview mirror. It's only when you look back that you're like,
so clear.
That all fit together. But with the benefit of hindsight, we all have 20/20 vision. Right. So I guess it's easier when you get to that other side. But it is that I guess it's learning the discipline of which practices work for you, and which practices don't work for you, and then kind of to your point, being a bit more forgiving, that when you've fallen into a bad decision or bad practice, to forgive yourself quickly so that you can actually move on and fix it, instead of just adding in another bad practice, which is let's now dwell on it.
And one of the things, and just to use economic terms, and I don't know why this occurred to me, I'm trying to determine, as I look back on 2020, because of this time of year, like I do this all year long, but there's certain times a year you go a little deeper into feeling that there's a fresh start. I'm trying to determine what are the leading indicators of a problem instead of having to rely on the lagging indicators that there was a problem. Like not just identifying, okay, this was a mistake. I didn't get the results I wanted. Okay, now we need to forgive ourselves faster, move on faster. But what could I put in place to make that whole process happen even more quickly? Because that's the trick. Like, again, you're up against neuroscience when you spiral out. So you're not going to change the way your brain works. But what can you put in place so that what used to throw you for a year only throws you for a quarter, and then a month, and then a week, and then a day, and then oh, well, that didn't work. Next.
Yeah. I love that, because it's in that, one of the things that I see a lot with clients is we don't do the lessons learned. We make the mistake. We do the beat ourselves up about the mistake, but we don't do what lessons have I learned that, to your point, can be my early indicators that I might be making a similar mistake in the future. Because true success always comes off the back of failure, because it's in when they've gone back and looked at it and gone, oh, it's not the whole thing's not wrong. If I just pulled these one or two things and kept the rest in, then it will move faster. And that's, we see that all the time, don't we?
And identifying the patterns. And the thing that makes me crazy and yet at the same time intrigued is, you've heard of the phrase, new level, new devil. And I don't think that's how it works. I think it's new level, same devil, different outfit.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's the same damn pattern, except it's trickier this time because you solve the easy version of it.
Yes, you just get into the next level, aren't you? The next, the next
iteration.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we expect that the answer is going to be massive.
No, and it's the same. It's the exact same answer, just a little better hidden.
Yeah.
And then my girlfriend and I used to say, oh my God, I hired my mother again. How did that happen? I thought I solved this problem, right? I do this over and over. How did I hire my mother again? I could have sworn this was
those eureka moments, don't you, where they just come through, and you're like, right, okay. And how did I fall for that part again? What was this time?
That's a great way to say it, because I think back to our conversation about we beat ourselves up for it, because that's how did I screw this up again? And I think for those of us who have achievements, we get harder and harder and harder on ourselves when we feel that we've not broken the pattern, that we've made the same mistake again, but in a different way.
It's brutal. And as you said earlier, we're filled with so much compassion for anybody else that makes the same mistake. I look at it, and I remember doing my TEDx last year, and the guy that was running it gave me some feedback afterwards, and he said, you were the most supportive person. You were so kind to everybody before they went on. I was doing people's hair and makeup for them because they were nervous, and they stood outside. He said, and outside before they went in, for everybody, you were like, you're brilliant. You know this stuff. You're all over it. Just trust yourself and enjoy it. He said, and then I heard what you said to yourself when you were stood outside on your own waiting to go in. And I was like, What I said to myself was, for crying out loud, it's 12 minutes. Just get over yourself and pull yourself together. Stop being so ridiculous. And it was really one of those eureka moments for me of, oh my goodness, I'm like Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah.
In a nice way, because I do the nice bit to everybody else and the mean bit to myself. But maybe if I could just keep learning so that I could do a little bit of that kindness to myself. Imagine the journey that you could be on. And that was a year ago, and I'm pleased to say I've learned a lot in that year. I still have my moments of pull yourself together.
Pull yourself together. Right. Yeah, I mean, I remember, and again, it was just so like yours. It was so blatantly obvious that it helps, right? I was in my car, and literally, this is so terrible, banging on my steering wheel. You stupid idiot. How could you seriously have screwed this up? Like, who would I ever talk to? I was mad at myself. In a million years, I would never, not just because of what's proper, because I never claim to be proper. I just would never do that to another person.
Yeah.
And yet, and then I'm like, okay, like, get a grip. Like, this is not okay.
It's true, isn't it? I mean, okay. I always think to myself now, if this were somebody I cared about and this had happened, what would I say to them, and why can I not say that to myself? So I play that dialogue now in my head in those moments, because I'll still get mad with myself, and I'll play it out and go, well, okay, I'd say this to them. Why would you say that? Because I genuinely feel it. They didn't do it on purpose. It was a mistake. They're learning from it. Their intention wasn't to get it wrong.
Right.
So all of those things that I know to be true, it's like, did you intend? And I have this for myself. Kim, did you intend to mess it up? Well, no. Did you intend to fall for it again? Well, no. Right. Okay. So let's just be marginally more forgiving of ourselves for the fact that we are perfectly imperfect human beings, and therefore we're fallible and we'll mess up, and now take the learning and move forward so that you actually.
I have a question for you with this, because you and I are very similar in this, and I know it's your show, but I'm asking the questions.
Go for it.
What do you do? How do you put in place what people call, and I say people call because clearly I have no frame of reference for this, processing the emotions? I don't even understand what that means. And, right? So I had a very hard year. I'm oddly perfectly excited about everything that's to come. Like I understand on that logical level, like everything that happened, and it was family and health stuff, and there's a big old thing. And I realized as I was doing some of the work that you just mentioned, especially this morning, that, because it's, new journal, new journal day, right? So it looks it's all organized and pretty still. It has chaos is not interrupted in the new journal, right? I have done nothing to process the feelings and the emotions attached to the challenges. And while I, to our point of our conversation, have moved past the angry reaction at myself, I don't know that I'm yet at, like, how do you process the emotions of it as opposed to the logical approach that you were outlining of moving through it?
It's such a great question. And, over the years, life's thrown me the odd plot twist, which has given me an opportunity to be in very, very highly emotional situations.
Yay!
I do believe everything in life is a lesson, a blessing, or both. So even in the moments I don't feel blessed, I know the lesson's in there and the blessing will be hidden in it.
Yeah.
And I remember in one particular, it was a personal situation, one particularly tough situation. I remember having a conversation with my ex and saying to him, "I'm really sorry. I need to hang up for 10 minutes and then I will call you back." And he was like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, "Well, right now I'm really finding it hard to find a response I'm going to be proud of. So I catch that in myself, and I'm going to remove myself from this conversation until I can deal with the emotion and then come back and not allow the emotion to drive what's going with us." And he was like, "Oh my God, you're such a robot." And I was like, "Now's not a good time for character assassination." I can't
do not dig your hole any deeper.
I'll park that for somewhere else. I said, but I guess I had to learn to do that in leading big organizations. And I did big transformational change. So it was a lot of upheaval. It was a lot of redundancies and restructuring, and they're highly emotive.
Yes.
And you have people coming at you swearing and angry and frustrated. And the natural response is very often to defend and to go back at them. But I was able, with lots and lots of work, lots of mentors, lots of putting in the effort to understand it, to acknowledge that people don't hurt you on purpose.
So what do you do then? Because I love that part, right? What do you do then to fill your cup? Because that, while we can all do better and learn better how to handle it, I think there is a emotional toll as opposed to a physical toll, right? Of staying in that space.
You have to go back and look at them. So what I've for me personally, I'm not saying work for everybody. For me personally, I've realized I don't need other people to be there when I look at them. As long as I look at them, as long as I go and find that space, as long as I find something that works appropriately for me. Some of my worst times appropriately for me was to cry for 5 hours on my own and just let the emotion out, because I needed to empty it for the next day. And I worked out, embarrassingly to say, that if I started crying at 8 o'clock at night, as long as I finished crying by 2 in the morning, nobody'd know.
Right, you were healthy.
It was in between Scarlett's feeds, and I didn't look like I'd been slapped around the face with a wet fish the following morning to go into work. And I did that for a number of months at one of my worst moments, because what I realized was you've got to deal with the emotion. If not, what you do is you bottle it up and you bottle it up and it bursts out somewhere else.
And I think that is one of the failings of a lot of the life coaching profession. Like they talk about, and I've studied all of it and enjoy it, the positive manifestation, the gratitude, and I, again, big fan.
Yeah.
But there is a big difference between releasing the emotion, right? You can't mistake any of that for believing you're not supposed to feel the emotion.
No, and they do. I've read a book actually to help my little girl out, but it's amazing and I recommend it to adults. It's called The Whole Brain Child, and it talks about the fact that actually what we should be doing is managing the whole brain and how the brain works. And the reason why all of us seen a child that was in full-on tantrum and then seemingly minutes later, happy as Larry.
I know a few adults that still do that. Right?
Living their best life. And it's because what little children do is they feel the emotion and they let it go, because we tell them not to. And actually, the book taught me some amazing things about parenting that I was getting really badly wrong. So the minute Scarlett cried, my initial reaction was to tell her everything was okay and to get her to stop crying. The book allows you to realize you're teaching her not to trust her emotion and not to feel them. So instead of fixing it, she doesn't want to be fixed, she wants to just feel in that moment. You should say, that must feel really awful, tell me about it, acknowledge it. So when she's woken up and it's like, monsters under the bed, instead of going, there aren't any, you have to go, well, that must be really scary. Okay, talk to me about that. Because what you want to do is teach them to trust that their emotions are valid and they're okay. And it's okay to feel them. And then what we need to do is work through them. So you don't leave it there, go, well, that's really scary. Then go, okay, that must be really scary. I'd have been scared if I felt like that. Should we have a look together? Because I don't think there are any there, but let's just put our minds at rest together. So we're acknowledging it. And I started doing it with adults, and it really helps. It's that piece that's going to stop suppressing the emotion. The emotion's right to feel, but you've got to feel it, acknowledge it, accept it, and let it go. And then
is it Brene Brown who talks about not calling them negative feelings?
Yeah, they're just emotions, of which we've got different ones. It's like, we give it a label, and then because of the label we give it, we decide if it's good or bad. Whereas actually, it is just what it is.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. And it was there to teach us something. So, I use a combination, and it really depends on what works, what works for me. And sometimes it's really helpful. And somebody got me to do this many years ago, and it was a great thing. I realized this is me interviewing you, and now I'm we've switched, but we do that. But they told me to go and ask people that I trusted, so friends, colleagues, bosses, and say, look, I really need you to be brutally honest with me, because this is about my development. Can you tell me one or two things that you think are my strengths? And can you tell me one or two things where I get in my own way? And it was amazing what you got played back. So even
the phrasing of that, instead of calling it a weakness, it's where I get in my own way, because those are two very different feeling,
Because it's not a weakness. It's a blind spot.
Right.
And a blind spot we can get through because we can shine a light on it. And if we can't see it, someone can shine a light on it for us. But it's all in the language, because the language that we tell ourselves our brain is a bit like a sat nav. So the language we tell it is where it drives us. So and it doesn't understand the difference between help and harm. So whatever we're telling it,
it's completely neutral.
Yeah.
I have a friend who suggested, she has a lot of different exercises she does for releasing the heavier emotions and anger and all of those things. So she lives in Idaho, and she tells me that she throws rocks and screams to release, right? And that is what I should do. Well, I live outside of Chicago. I could drive for 2 hours in any direction and still if I start throwing rocks and screaming, the police are coming. I don't live right. This is not
and it's finding the thing that works for you, Erin. For me, sometimes I'll decide it's a really good idea to go and make bread. I'm probably never eaten that bread because I've needed the living daylights out of it. But actually, it's a really great release, and it's a quiet release. So if I'm in the house on my own and I'm really angry and Scarlett's upstairs, she's never going to hear that rant. but I can get it out by eating the bread. Or I'll, if I'm walking the dog and it happens to be somewhere quiet, I might yell, or I might put on a really loud music and just dance it out.
Yeah.
And
I used to call like
you.
And for me, it is the staying, not just occasionally, but staying immersed in nature.
Yeah.
Right. Staying immersed in nature in some way just kind of dissipates so much of the chaotic emotions.
Well, it's kind of sending it, it's grounding your energy so that you've got those parts. But I would say for everybody listening or watching, try a few things, find the one that works for you. And we do live in a despair and compare society. So people tell us what works for them, and then we start to go, well, it doesn't work for us, there's something wrong with us. So no, it's just right for us. It's like, what works for me won't work for somebody else. But if we all share what does work for us, eventually there'll be enough information that we can find a thing that does, that really does work, that allows us to just get it out of our head.
And I think that's such a big part of that's, it was missing, and it's been a while when I was in corporate. But if you have to have these mechanisms, especially as an entrepreneur and a small business owner, that saying that your business can never outgrow you is just so true, because you can get really, really far in a career. Because to my personal horror, when I left corporate and I thought I was so brilliant because I had such a great career, that really is achieving on a narrow path that somebody else created. Mm-hmm. And so there's not nearly as many pitfalls, because if you just follow the path, right?
Yeah.
But as a small business owner, entrepreneur, like I said, first meltdown was over the printer. Your business can't outgrow you. And that was one of my biggest shocks when I started my journey, was that the thing that was messing me up was very seldom what I was doing, and almost always how I was thinking.
Yeah.
Was not prepared for that.
As entrepreneurs in our business, we are both our greatest asset and our biggest distractor.
Yeah.
Because it can only go at the pace we can go at. And if we think wrong, it will go wrong, because what we think about, we become. So, and that's really hard when you get stuck in a pitfall in your business and then you spiral into it. And actually what you're really supposed to be thinking of is, what's the answer, not what's the problem. But instead we kind of all delve into, we know that problem inside out, don't we? Inside out, upside down, we can name its children. But we've not spent as much time thinking about, what's the art of the possible. And for me, that's one of the things that I ask people all the time, because when you're asking people to think outside of the box, it's a very frightening place to be, because people are expecting that whatever you say is concrete. It's
it's forever, that every decision is a forever.
It's going to work. Whereas if you go with, okay, well, what do we think is likely? And then what is the art of the possible? The art of the possible is where we trigger our creative brain, because it doesn't have to be right or wrong. It's the art of the possible. So we start with that, and then we can pull it back and go, okay, well, which bits work, which bits didn't work? How do we learn from those? And I think, again, it's all back to, I guess one of my greatest lessons so far has been the importance of language. The language we use on ourselves and the language we use on other people. And because Absolutely. Just changing one word can totally change the outcome of kind of where we're going. But Liven, you are so right. It is that that self journey as an entrepreneur that I think becomes a massive lesson for us all. Erin, I could chat to you literally all day, and you'll have to come back on because we need to do this again. If you could go back and give yourself a piece of advice at the start of your entrepreneurial journey, what would it be?
Advice, I would dive into that personal development much sooner. And one of the things that I've learned to ask myself, constantly is, where can I be a little bit more brave? You know, that lands for me.
Yeah.
So where can I be? I always say, you want to get me to do something, all you have to do is say, oh, I bet you can't, you know, fill in the blank. It's really easy. So I know how to use that against myself. Like, where can I be a little more brave? And it would really be around so much of diving deep in that personal development side of things, which is, people are somewhat shocked because I really am so much of a strategist and a business strategist, as are you. And yet this is the conversations that we end up with. So diving into that sooner, whatever that would have looked like, and a little bit more bravely.
I love that. I always enjoy our conversations. I always learn so much. And I think it's those parts around you. It's planning for the unknown, those bits, that entrepreneurial journey where you're it. It's like playing, like when you first started out, it's like the worst game of tag you're ever going to play. It's like you are literally it, for whatever is the question. And then that realization that, you know, they used to have an analogy over here where, you know, and I don't know why he was named Poor Fat Stanley, so forgive me that was his name, but the Sunday school group went on a walk and little Fat Stanley could only walk so fast. So where did you put him? Did you put him at the front of the group, the back of the group, or the middle? And it's like, it doesn't matter. The group only goes as fast as Stanley grows. Right. And when you realize you are Stanley in your business, and therefore, you know, you've got to do that work to be able to move it through, is both a eureka moment and also a daunting next stage, because you're like, oh, I've got that to learn now as well as everything else. And you know, that finding what works for you, I love that. You know, the where can I be brave?
Where can I be brave?
Finding that your trigger phrase, isn't it? The one that you know is going to switch on that little bit of you that can always go a bit faster.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, Erin, I love it. We will have all of the contact details with you below, but how can people best get in touch with you, and who can you best help?
Awesome. So we make it real easy for you. Everything is at conqueryourbusiness.com. So just go to the website, conqueryourbusiness.com, and you can get to me and all my stuff a million different ways. The person that I best help is the solopreneur entrepreneur who is trying to get over the bridge into becoming a business owner, right? They've created a business around themselves. They're doing the business, but how do we then, having created this personal brand, how do we then keep the personal brand, but add now a scalable self-managing business behind them so that they can really launch for what's next?
Oh, I love that. And that is so needed, because that is where people can get so stuck, isn't it? They do all of that work, and then what they really need is someone to help them and see their own blind spots so that they can then address those blind spots.
Because, and I will promise you, it's not about doing more work. It's about doing different work.
Yeah.
And they're right. And it's kind of like everything we talked about. You only learn it by doing it. So you haven't done this yet. So you don't know, how do I do different work?
Yeah.
To allow myself to get over that bridge into a business owner, not just a business doer.
I love that. Erin, it's been an absolute joy. Until next time, take care, and I look forward to speaking to you really soon.
Thank you.